As dawn broke in Pacific Palisades, we found a scene that can only be described as apocalyptic. The once vibrant village off iconic Sunset Boulevard had stood like this for decades.
Oh my God.
Until now.
We just arrived here in what is left of downtown Pacific Palisades, and I am overwhelmed by the scale of loss. Many people are going to return to homes that were lost, and even more important, their community completely gone.
Those flying into LAX last night saw an endless blanket of flame.
So this is footage right now of what's going on in the state of California, in and around the Los Angeles area. And you would be forgiven for looking at this footage and assuming that this was the firebombing of Tokyo being colorized and HDified. You would be forgiven for looking at this and thinking this is a third world country currently going through an armed conflict. But no, I assure you, this is what is happening right now in the state of California. People are losing their homes, all of their worldly possessions, and there's a lot of people online who think just because some notable celebrities lost their homes in these fires that this doesn't impact regular, ordinary, everyday people, but I can assure you that is not the case. Friend of the channel, Devin Tracy, you guys might know him as AIU, actually told me the other day when I was trying to bring him good news about a lack of censorship on Facebook that his parents' home, his family home that he grew up in, was completely burned to the ground. They have lost everything, decades worth of property that they accumulated, priceless artifacts that were handed down from Devin's grandfather, and of course, the character in their lives that was their home, that was their home base, that again, his father has spent decades building. And again, a lot of people are going to say that's a wealthy area of California, the guy's perfectly fine, but in reality, this property was bought in the 1970s when this was a much different community. It was a one-floor home that Devin's father, over time, by himself, ended up adding an additional floor to, ended up expanding, ended up personalizing so that it can transform from a house to a home. And it's something that he and his entire family consider to be home. And now his family doesn't have shoes. They don't have clothes. They've lost absolutely everything. So Devin has set up a GoFundMe in order to help his family through these times. Now, of course, the money amount that they're asking for, in my opinion, is far too low. But when I talked to him, he said, listen, the whole community is gone. The whole neighborhood is gone. So he feels a little bit bad about asking for what he's asking for in order to help his parents, because every single person that his parents know essentially are going through the same thing. The whole community, again, is completely ripped up, and you could see images of the before and after and all of that. If you like, I'm going to put some of them on screen. So what I'm going to say to you guys out there in my audience is that if you're a fan of Devin, if you want to help him, if you want to help his family, please donate. If you're a fan of me and you don't know who Devin is and you want to help somebody that has been a great friend to me over the course of years, please donate. And if you can't donate for whatever reason, or you don't want to donate, maybe Devin's not your cup of tea, I completely and totally understand that. It's fine. I get it. It's your money. I would never try to pressure you or force you into giving it to somebody that you didn't want to do, but just know that there are real human consequences of this, and it does impact people, and you might be connected to somebody who lost everything. And now, without further ado, let's get into all the different various issues with California government that allowed this crisis to get to the level that it actually is at. And first, I want to start with Karen Bass.
Do you owe citizens an apology for being absent while their homes were burning? Do you regret cutting the fire department budget by millions of dollars, Madam Mayor? Have you nothing to say today? Have you absolutely nothing to say to the citizens today? Elon Musk says that you're utterly incompetent. Are you considering your position? Madam Mayor, have you absolutely nothing to say to the citizens today who are dealing with this disaster? No apology for them? Do you think you should have been visiting Ghana while this was unfolding back home?
So that is video that is going viral right now of Mayor of Los Angeles, Karen Bass, being confronted in a London airport and seemingly not answering any of the questions that the reporter has, looking like a deer in the headlights in that situation, and it's honestly embarrassing.
Madam Mayor, let me ask you just again, have you anything to say to the citizens today as you return?
No. Ma'am, hold on 1 second.
Madam Mayor, just a few words for the citizens today as you return to deal with the catastrophe.
Can you take this down?
Now, you might be asking yourself, why is the mayor of Los Angeles currently in a London airport at the time that her city that she's in charge of is burning? And this is because the mayor decided to take a trip to the nation of Ghana in order to see their president get inaugurated for some reason, because people in the Democratic Party at the local level, for some reason, think that a part of their job as a mayor of a city is to go and do and participate in all these international things that do absolutely nothing for the state of California. But it definitely raises her profile and raises her image. But to be perfectly clear, to be perfectly fair, I think the hype around this is a little bit overblown, and I'll explain why. First and foremost, she was in Ghana prior to the fires breaking out. She immediately decided to head back, and I remember back in the day when Governor Chris Christie took his family to Disney World, and then a snowstorm hit New Jersey, and people shamed him into coming back to the state of New Jersey, when in reality, Governor Christie's fat ass was not going to shovel snow better than anyone else, much in the same way that Karen Bass isn't going to help put out the fires in any way, shape, or form. And it also obscures the fact that all of the problems that led to this wildfire being as bad as it actually is far predate this trip to Ghana. This is years in the making, decades in the making, and I think it's really important to emphasize the policy failures that led us to this point, the obvious signs and other fires before that should have triggered a change in policy that was never followed up on, rather than shame this mayor, who obviously looks like a bumbling idiot, let me be clear about that, for going on this one trip. Now, of course, a lot of people have pointed out that Mayor Karen Bass's budget, the most recent one, cuts LA Fire by $17.8 million, and in her original proposal, she was actually pushing for a $23 million cut, but in reality, again, this is a recent cut in the current budget, and of course, this only represents about 1 to 2% of the budget of LA Fire, so this is not the major thing that ended up leading to these fires getting out of control. However, there are many issues that people have pointed out, like a misprioritization of what is important in the fire department, and of course, this has to do with DEI initiatives.
You want to see somebody that responds to your house, your emergency, whether it's a medical call or a fire call, that looks like you. It gives that person a little bit more ease, knowing that somebody might understand their situation better. Is she strong enough to do this? Or, you couldn't carry my husband out of a fire. Which my response is, he got himself in the wrong place if I have to carry him out of a fire.
Now, the reason I played that clip right there of the deputy fire chief talking about how, oh, well, people question whether or not us, including women, and me specifically as a woman firefighter, could carry your husband out of a fire, but in reality, in a cheeky way, she says, your husband totally messed up if he's stuck in a fire and needs her to carry them out, because it's perfectly representative of this idea of how it's more important for the fire department to be LGBTQ friendly, to have more women, rather than to have competent people that can actually do the job. And while this is important, while this does impact the performance of the fire department, the fact of the matter is, in terms of the wildfire situation, the fact that they were trying to hire women before that, which by the way is a failing DEI initiative, is not actually the key component or the key factor in what is causing these fires to go out of control. Again, it shows to a stunning degree how incompetent these people are on prioritizing what is and isn't important, but in reality, in actuality, the major issues that led to these fires blazing out of control have to do with the state level government and have to do in recent years with Governor Gavin Newsom, because he's been warned time and time again in the time that he's been in office about the problems related to California's forest management, water management, and how it obviously makes these fires significantly worse. But instead of actually doing something about it, Governor Gavin Newsom has decided to say, well, climate change, and also directed ire at people who are criticizing him and then lie about him actually addressing those concerns. So obviously, I just want to make this clear to everybody out there in the audience, regardless of your position on climate change, you still have to do the regular, ordinary maintenance stuff in order to mitigate the consequences of forest fires if you live in an area that for decades we know are prone to wildfires wildfires. This should be obvious to everyone, but for whatever reason, people in the left wing seem to enjoy the idea of the governor scolding Republicans after a disaster absolutely devastates their state, rather than, following the advice of Republicans and preparing for a disaster so it isn't so bad in their state. And there are many clips of President Trump talking about how Governor Gavin Newsom needs to clean the floor of his forest, he needs to rake the leaves.
They said, we have no water. I said, do you have a drought? No, we don't have a drought. I said, why do you have no water? Because the water isn't allowed to flow down. It's got a natural flow from Canada all the way up north, water, more water than they could ever use. And in order to protect a tiny little fish, the water up north gets routed into the Pacific Ocean. Millions and millions of gallons of water gets poured. I could have water for all of that land. Water for your forests. Your forests are dry as a bone.
Yeah.
Okay?
Dangerous.
That water could be routed. You could have everything. Not only dangerous, billions of dollars a year they spend on forest fires. And, there's a case with the environment. They're not allowed to rake their forests because you're not allowed to touch it. And all they have to do is clean their forest, meaning rake it up, get rid of the leaves, get rid of, leaves that are sitting there for 5 years. And
we'll certainly get rid of the dead fall.
And get rid of the trees that have fallen.
Yeah.
And while that is an oversimplification of the issue, forest management is a huge deal in the state of California, and it's something that environmentalists prevent from going on properly time and time again. And in fact, the environmentalists are so bad in the state of California that you look at other places in the Pacific, in the Northwest, that have these particular issues, and in the Southwest, in terms of climate, in terms of forest fires and whatnot, and it begs the question, why are the fires so much worse in the state of California? And this is because they are prevented from acting in ways that make sense by environmental lobbies. Now, a lot of people have pointed out that the state of California saw record rainfall last year, and honestly, that fresh water, after years of lower water or drought, seemed like it was a godsend, but the fact of the matter is, California had no infrastructure in order to capture that water, so they just let it flow into the Pacific Ocean, completely wasting it. And the thing is, there's a lot of people who will say, well, Sean, these people voted for this, they voted for the Democratic Party, they get what they voted for, but in reality, that's not actually the case. In 2014, they had a ballot initiative on whether or not they were going to build up more reservoirs to try to capture fresh water in order to store it, in order to offset the dry season and conditions like drought. And guess what? Overwhelmingly, the voters voted to store that water. They voted to build that infrastructure. They voted to send the bonds necessary in order to complete those projects. And you want to know how many reservoirs have been built since 2014? You want to know how many water storage facilities have been set up with that bond money? A big goose egg. Zero. Nada. Because California completely mismanages money, and building anything in California is a corrupt process where people graft as much money out of the project as humanly possible. I mean, look at this article that I found from January 2023, 9 years after they passed the ballot initiative to build the infrastructure in order to capture water for precisely these scenarios. Some of the few Republicans in the California state legislature, which is supermajority Democrat, held a press conference, and during the press conference, they described all these different various problems. Quote, look at these swollen rivers, Assembly Leader James Gallagher of Yuba City told me after he and GOP colleagues held a news conference near the rampaging American River in Sacramento last week. Quote, all of these waters should be captured. At the news conference, Gallagher contended that, quote, the Democratic supermajority and the governor have failed to make investments in water infrastructure. Now, the article accurately points out that they actually are spending billions on water infrastructure, it's just that nothing gets built. Gallagher later told this reporter, quote, money is not the problem. For Proposition 1's main dam project site, a proposed off-stream reservoir in Colusa County, it would hold 1.5 million acre-feet of water pumped from the nearby Sacramento River. Quote, it's been studied since Eisenhower was president and is stuck in permitting, the GOP leader said. It's taking forever, decades and decades. It's a bureaucratic morass. Now, Governor Gavin Newsom said he didn't disagree with this critique. However, his quote about how they're rolling along actually gave a date for when they were going to start building this stuff, and it said we should be all squared away to initiate construction on this project in 2025. And then after that, it will take 6 or 7 years. So again, California voters vote for the bonds in terms of billions of dollars in order to build this stuff. You have sites that have been designated as appropriate in order to build these reservoirs, in order to capture this water, that again, the studies go all the way back to Dwight D. Eisenhower and Gavin Newsom saying, hey, look, we're rolling along, no big deal. We're going to be squared away with the permitting process at the end of 2024, and we should be able to initiate the construction in 2025, and then maybe in 6 or 7 years, it will be built. This is crazy. This is insane. This is bad governance to the extreme. It's not that difficult to say, hey, if we have no water or low water in Los Angeles, and we have surplus water in the north of our state, why don't we build the infrastructure to retain the surplus water so we could bring it downstate? But obviously that's too logical and too sensible for the state of California, for California Democrats. Now, by the way, at the same time that all of this was going on, that's when California was wasting $24 billion on the homeless industrial complex for programs that, by the way, they have no way of tracking the effectiveness or how the money was spent. So in statewide politics, they basically incinerate your money on pointless, stupid projects that, by the way, don't improve homelessness. It's not like there were less homeless people after they spent the $24 billion than there was before, but the projects that actually matter, that people actually vote for, that people actually demand, that would have an impact, they don't actually even start, let alone complete. And by the way, this isn't just President Trump or the Republicans talking about this after the fact. NPR actually reported in 2021, and for those of you who are unaware, NPR is a very left-leaning source, that Governor Gavin Newsom was blatantly lying about how many acres of forest that he was managing, how many acres of forest that they were clearing the brush or raking the leaves, as Trump would say, and he was exaggerating them to nearly tenfold. According to this NPR article, again, from back in 2021, Gavin Newsom was telling people about how he had directed the Forest Service to clear 90,000 acres of all this brush that ends up leading to these crazy fires. But in reality, according to NPR and California's own state numbers, that 90,000 acres was actually 11,000 acres. And we also have additional articles that people are sharing screenshots from all over social media that says that people in these forest management offices don't want to do controlled burns on the chance that the controlled burn might get out of hand, and they feel comfortable allowing all this brush to stay where it is, because if a forest fire starts, then people will just blame Mother Nature. People will just blame global warming, and at least it won't be the fault of the agency. In addition to that, while Gavin Newsom is championing how good California is at forest management, he actually cut the budget of the Forest Management Office by $150 million. Again, according to NPR, not according to President Trump, not according to Republicans, not according to a conservative news outlet. According to NPR, Gavin Newsom was lying about this back then. But the lies never stop from Gavin Newsom. Of course, people have seen these photos that are just ridiculous. The guy shows up to the Palisades fire, one of the absolute most devastating fires of the three that are currently surrounding Los Angeles, and he does a photo op there where he's looking at it, and you're supposed to feel, oh my god, Gavin Newsom is so empathetic, but in reality, this guy isn't empathetic at all whatsoever. This guy is pure scum through and through. If he was empathetic, then, you know, maybe he would have actually built the things that people voted for in order to actually have water coming out of the fire hydrants, because one of the reasons why the fire departments basically had to abandon these neighborhoods was not because they were bad people, but it was because the water was quite literally not coming out of the hydrants.
And what's so surreal is look down the block. It is block after block here in this area in Altadena. I mean, there's a huge fire there, burning several houses. Any other time, there would be fire crews blocking off this entire area. But there's just too many fires, and they've just got it's triage. We come upon Captain Chris Dinelli of the LA Fire Department. He's been up more than 24 hours. How's water? I mean, obviously Palisades have had water issues.
Our hydrant ran dry about 2 minutes ago.
And is that the water pressure issue? Or
we are because there's so many engines tapping the grid and multiple grids, we're basically just taking all the water out of the grid.
And when water was needed most, the hydrants ran out. 3 large water tanks are designed to hold 1 million gallons each. The first ran dry by 4:45 p.m. yesterday, the second by 8:30, and the third in the middle of the night.
We had a tremendous demand on our system in the Palisades. We pushed the system to the extreme.
The terrible toll, at least 1,000 structures destroyed, 15,000 more still at risk, and 37,000 residents who remain evacuated.
Los Angeles is the largest city in the state of California. It is the wealthiest city in the state of California. It is the second wealthiest city in the United States of America. It is the second largest city in the United States of America. And the water doesn't come out of the fire hydrants when you need it most. This is absolutely disastrous. And of course, a lot of people are showing videos of the water being sent into the Pacific Ocean. President Trump has criticized Gavin Newsom for letting all this water go into the ocean for years, but all of this was ignored due to environmentalists, and now they've decided to find a new boogeyman, which of course is this billionaire agricultural family that is sucking up and allowed to buy all this different various water in order to grow crops that are not suited for this particular region. And to be clear, the corrupt way in which this family got access to all of this water is real, it is disgusting, and it's absolutely shameful. But this is also California living up to that name, because never since the Aral Sea diversion in order to grow cotton in the Soviet Union have I seen a poorer mismanagement of water by the government than them diverting all this water from a water-starved region in order to grow pistachios and almonds and all these different high water intensity crops like they're doing in the state of California. Again, this is communist level mismanagement of resources, and the people of Los Angeles are suffering the consequences of this due to the fact that these people got all of their people in on the California Regulatory Board for Water, and essentially they bought off former Senator, now passed away Senator, Dianne Feinstein. But again, the lies and the deception don't stop there. There is a viral video that is now going around of a mother who confronted Gavin Newsom about the loss of her children's elementary school.
Governor, you got a second? Governor, I live here, Governor. That was my daughter's school, Governor. Please tell me what you're going to do. I'm not going to hurt him, I promise.
I'm literally talking to the president right now to specifically answer the question of what we can do for you and your daughter.
And one of the craziest things about this is Gavin Newsom, the guy who presents himself as the empathy guy, the guy who cares harder than everybody else. He cares so hard, he decided to pose for photos while he's watching the fire blaze while water's not coming out of the fire hydrant. He looks at this woman in her face, as you could hear the tears in her voice, you could hear the emotion, and lies to her. He tells her that he's currently on the phone with the president, and by the way, the woman very intelligently calls him out and says to put it on speakerphone, and his response is just so indicative of the person he really is, of new scum, not Gavin Newsom, the empathetic governor. It's just something I have to play for you.
Can I hear it? Can I hear your call? Because I don't believe it.
I'm sorry. There's literally, I've tried 5 times. That's why I'm walking around to make the call.
Why is the president not taking your call?
Because it's not going through. So
Why?
I have to get cell service.
So let's get it. Let's get it. I want to be here when you call the president.
I appreciate it. I'm doing that right now. And it's to immediately get reimbursements, individual assistance, and to help you. I'm devastated for you. I'm so sorry, especially for your daughter.
This man, this governor with the giant ego who wants to be president in 2028, lied to this woman's face, said that he was on the phone with the president. She said, put it on speakerphone. And then he said, oh, I'm searching for bars. I'm searching for a signal. So the guy tried to pretend to be on the phone with the president of the United States of America, dealing with the issues that she had, got called out, and it turns out he's pretending now that there's no signal and he just lost connection with them. What a disgusting and pointless lie. Remember, this is just a mom. This is just a regular person. She just wants to be reassured. Gavin Newsom could have done that fake empathy thing where he put his arm around her. He told her that it's going to be all right, that he's going to make sure it's going to be all right. But he was so disgusted by the riffraff, by the human garbage, which is how he views the citizens of the state of California, that he decided to fake a phone call with the president and then got called out for it. And then he faked not having signal. No bars. Sorry, lady. Can't help you. Now get the hell away from my SUV. You're human garbage. Again, according to Gavin Newsom. But the thing is, that's the real Gavin Newsom. Make no mistake about it. This is a man who doesn't care about anyone but himself, doesn't care about anything but setting himself up for a presidential election run, and he's already screwed over the people in the state of California so badly when it's come to this. And of course, I'm referencing what happened in a previous fire that was started, of course, by the power company refusing to change a 100-year-old hook that linked the power lines and was a safety issue that would have cost that power company $10. Now, of course, when a bunch of different residents ended up losing their home due to those fires, and by the way, a bunch of people died, Gavin Newsom came into office and defended the company.
Now, nearly 5 years ago, California suffered the deadliest and most destructive fire in the state's history when Pacific Gas and Electric's 97-year-old equipment failed and sparked the Camp Fire. The blaze began on November 8th, 2018 in Northern California's Butte County. Winds rapidly drove the fire downhill through developed communities, causing the deaths of 85 people, the injuries of dozens of firefighters, and the destruction of 18,000 structures. An estimated 30,000 Californians either lost their homes or suffered severe damage. The towns of Paradise and Conco suffered the brunt of the damage, with around 95% of their communities absolutely burned to ash. Media have reported over and over again that the fire was sparked due to a faulty electric transmission line belonging to PG&E. But in reality, it was a nearly 100-year-old C-hook holding up the power lines that finally broke, causing active power lines to fall onto the dry forest floor. An FBI investigation found that PG&E knew that their outdated equipment was a huge risk, but PG&E did nothing about it. After all, replacing the hooks would cut into their profits. According to local ABC 10 reporter Brandon Rittemann's investigative reporting, it would have cost PG&E just $10 to replace the aging hook.
And to make matters worse, not only did he defend the company, as explained to us by Anna, who by the way has also left her home due to these fires.
Once in office, Newsom hired private attorneys from O'Melveny and Myers to write a bill called AB 1054. Sure, laws are thought to be written by elected lawmakers, but not in this case. Using taxpayer money, Newsom awarded the firm a whopping $9.6 million to assist him with PG&E's bankruptcy. Publicly, Newsom spoke glowingly about the law firm, but he did not disclose that O'Melveny and Myers worked on behalf of PG&E for at least 2 decades, and as recently as 2017, the year before the Camp Fire. Documents show that as the bill was being drafted, Newsom held meetings with PG&E executives. On June 18th, 2019, Newsom met with PG&E CEO Bill Johnson, Senior VP John Simon, CFO Jason Wells, and more. Newsom would go on to sign the legislation that O'Melveny and Myers, private attorneys, wrote into law. And it's pretty clear that the legislation was crafted specifically to provide financial protections for PG&E and its shareholders.
He actually set it up in such a way that the people who were victimized by this power company, who lost everything, were paid in the stock of the company, which was artificially overvalued when it was given to them before it dropped like a rock. And the judge, because of the way that they structured this particular settlement, told these people that they would have to root for the company that sometimes, by the way, killed members of their own family, cost them their homes, and their stock to go up in order for them to see any value in what they received as compensation for that.
But many of the actual victims of the Camp Fire have yet to receive any restitution from PG&E. Almost 5 years after the fire, Paradise residents are still camping where their houses once stood. The Fire Victim Trust Fund that was set up following PG&E's bankruptcy was supposed to receive $13.5 billion from PG&E, but the utility company only paid half of that in cash. The other half was supposed to be paid as shares in PG&E's stock. Almost a year after the power company exited bankruptcy, the value of those shares tanked, likely due to the, yearly wildfires their company sparks. The shares that were initially valued at $6.75 billion were soon worth just $4.8 billion, which robbed the fire victims of nearly $2 billion.
Which is one of the reasons why I tweeted out that I really genuinely hope that the power company that covers the Los Angeles area is not responsible for this, because make no mistake about it, Gavin Newsom would do the exact same thing again to the residents of California, and then he turn around and say he's for the people. Then he turn around and say, media, back me up, pump me up so I can run for president, despite the fact that this man is wholly controlled by special interests and again, only gives a damn about himself, even though the media tells you he's oh so empathetic. Now again, one final cherry on top of all this, because a lot of people are gonna say, hey, insurance is gonna pay for this, insurance is gonna pay out all these people, is that California actually had a stupid ass ballot initiative, and I think this was specifically in Los Angeles, that was meant to artificially cap the prices of insurance, because obviously it was going up because there's great risk of wildfire, and this caused a bunch of different insurance companies to leave the market because they try to put price controls in. These companies who knew the risk and knew the problems decided to pull out, so many of people in the state of California in this particular area that are prone to wildfires ended up having their policies canceled very shortly before this fire actually occurred. So rather than them being able to decide if they want to pay those higher premiums or maybe pay some premiums but get less coverage so they cannot be completely wiped out, mismanagement from the state of California has basically ensured that these people will lose absolutely everything. And that's really the gut-wrenching thing, because while a lot of people are quick to laugh, quick to point out that the fire department is obsessed with getting women, or the fire jackets that were donated to the Ukraine that could have been used in this particular instance, that's not the problem. That's not the primary issue. It is years, decades of mismanagement in the state of California, years and decades of them selling people out, of them lying to people, of residents of California voting the proper way on smart things like water storage and not actually getting the follow through from their government, that has left so many people with nothing, that has left them completely wiped out. And we see this time and time again in different various disasters across the country. We talked about the bad responses to bad weather that occurred just prior to the election in North Carolina, in Florida, and whatnot. But the truth is, in Florida, Ron DeSantis actually has your back. He's actually good at storm responses, because Florida does amazing things. Like when a bridge collapsed in the Florida Keys, they were able to rebuild it in 2 to 3 days. Meanwhile, in California, all of the groundwork, all of the foundation has not been laid. They just expect you guys to deal with the consequences of this, expect regular ordinary people, and obviously, of course, wealthy people to be wiped out by these fires, and then they want you to accept climate change as the explanation so they can move on and do it again. And when there's somebody actually at fault, when people who are in power are responsible, like the power company, they rig the rules after the fact and pay these people in the stock that's plummeting from the company. That's California. That's Gavin Newsom. And honestly, it's pure evil. So yeah, I know it's a blue state and all the different various things that people talk about relating to politics, but the fact that all of this is happening in the United States of America, and one of my good friends' family home has been obliterated, possibly due to these policies, is making me really emotional. I got a bunch of different cards from my wedding photographer that I'm supposed to send out as thank you cards to all these different various people, and I realized that the address that I'm supposed to send Devin's card to, because he attended the wedding, he was one of my most excited guests to be there, is his parents' address is a place that doesn't exist. And it's just gut-wrenching to me to know that there is a high probability that his family, my friend, my good friend, is going to be completely screwed over by a government. And by the way, by a government that they did not necessarily vote for, by policies that they likely voted against. It's shameful, it's disgusting, it's ridiculous. And I really hope for those of you who can, you do help support my friend, because it's a way to help me by helping me help him, and I'd really appreciate it. But you know what? Those are just my thoughts. Obviously, my heart goes out to everybody who lost their stuff, who lost their lives in the state of California, but hopefully this produces change going forward and we can get better at this management. But you know what? That's all I got for you guys today. If you liked the video, show them by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on the social medias, support me via the support links in the description of this video, support my friend, top link in the description. Till next time.